Aging is something that we all have to go through. No matter how long we live, we're going to be aging constantly every single day. When you wake up, you have aged a little bit more. This represents so much in, of course, the medical and health aspects of life. The physical body begins to deteriorate, and the mind, which is controlled by the brain, which is also a physical organ, begins to not be as sharp as it used to be. Yes, there are things that you can do to improve your aging and your quality of life, but ultimately, the longer you live, the harder it's going to be in terms of those biological processes, everything from digestion, metabolism, blood pressure, bone density. Me being a person who just turned 55, anyone that knows me will tell you that I despise the aging process, but I'm working on trying to embrace it and do what I can in order to maintain my health, what I have now, as long as I possibly can. And sometimes there are things that you cannot control, but you can learn to manage. And I think that is something that no matter what age you are, it's always good to look at what your lifestyle is right now. So that's kind of the biological process of aging. The social process is, of course, quite different. The longer we live, the more people, the probability of seeing more people that we know and love pass away. But also there is it could be loneliness. There could be isolation. Now, you could be alone and not be lonely, but many people are so used to being around other people. Many have never lived by themselves, and throughout their whole life, they go from where they were raised into a marriage, and then they have children, and there's family members, and maybe not until towards the end of life, maybe a spouse passes away or there's a divorce, children have moved out, that they're alone for the very first time, and that could be very jarring. What I've always learned is you could be, the best company you could possibly have. And there's different things that you can do to just kind of build that muscle, that social muscle of being alone. Go to dinner by yourself at a restaurant. Go to a movie by yourself. Do some things by yourself on your own, sometimes involving other people. I recently went to a pottery workshop in Mid-City just to try something new, and I've never been on that wheel. Wanted to see what that felt like, if it was something that I might do again. I was the only one who came alone. Everyone else came with their partner, their significant other. And I would say, that situation, I was able to interact with them, and afterwards be on my merry way. So you can be around other people and interact, but not necessarily have to be in a relationship, especially a toxic one, which is why many people find themselves in a toxic relationship, because, they don't want to be alone. The other thing about aging, our age, other people's age, the good thing is, as we age, everyone else around us is aging, but that span of time between our ages is going to be different at different periods in time. I have a couple nieces, 5 years old and 8 years old. When I talk to them, it's very different from when I'm talking to you through this medium, or where I'm talking to my friends when we're hanging out, or when I'm speaking at a professional conference, or when I'm talking to my supervisor or someone who's even older than I am. Imagine that. There is a different reverence that I have for age, and there's a different tenderness I have when I communicate with younger children. And I think that when we are in an educational environment, particularly higher education, we're going to present ourselves as an engaged student who's going to demonstrate that they have taken the time, again, especially with the written word, right, to review what they've written. It's like writing a business letter versus a text to a friend. A business letter is going to be quite different. You want to review it. You want to make sure it's clear. If it's not clear to you, it's not going to be clear to anybody else. So the clarity is about really understanding the intellectual development and where a person is in their life. As we know, language is not static. It changes over time. There's new words that are introduced. We often use word slang or lingo. Does change over time, but most people will understand the context unless you use a lot of abbreviations, which is common in the world of text-based languages that don't necessarily translate in certain environments, certainly don't always translate in the spoken word. It's highly unlikely you would be sitting with some people and say LOL, LOL, right? So we know that there are different communication channels. There's different ways in interacting with people in person versus on the phone versus on a video. So all these things intersect with age. Of course, they also intersect with gender and race and culture and ethnicity. But I think the universal is no matter what your gender is, or if you don't have a gender, what your race is, or if you don't subscribe to a race affiliation, a culture affiliation, an ethnic identity, we are all aging and we are all moving towards our eventual death. There's the great universal of humanity. So yes, being cognizant of that, how we present ourselves and how we communicate is really a very important part of understanding not only our own aging, but aging of others as well. And maybe we'll cultivate more empathy that way. Thanks for listening.